And we are live. Welcome. This is a street epistemology study group. We don't have one specific guest, but we will start with a little thing I wrote. Street epistemology has a lot of jargon terms.
Excuse me? What was that second word? Epistle something?
Epistemology, the study of how we come to believe things. The scientific field is called epistemology, and so is an individual's own system for deciding what is true and what is false.
So my epistemology is my list of what I think is true and false.
Close, but not quite. Your epistemology is like the process or method you use to evaluate claims to decide whether you believe the claim or not.
Ah, thanks.
As I said, SE has a lot of jargon.
Sorry to interrupt. What is SE?
Thank you for interrupting. SE is short for street epistemology. I'm glad you're asking about any terms you aren't sure what they mean.
Okay, and what is jargon?
Jargon is any term or word that is specific to a context or field of study or has a different meaning than in common usage.
Why does SE need jargon?
Street epistemology is based on Socratic Dialogue from 2,500 years ago. Plato and his friends had a lot of words we use today, like Elenchus, the part of a question and answer about a claim to see if the reasons given are reasonable.
Elenchus? How do you spell that?
Elenchus. No need to write that down. They are all listed in the doobly-doo. Mostly, we only use these terms when talking about SE, rarely when practicing SE.
Sorry, could you say that again? I was writing a note and I tuned you out.
Just double tap on the screen and go back 10 seconds. SE needs jargon because it is a form of conversation with specific roles.
Role play. Cool. I have my dice.
You won't need the dice. There are no roles, only roles. I expect to be the interlocutor, the person that makes a claim and answers questions about that claim.
And for this demonstration, I'll be the interrogator, the one that asks the questions.
I don't like that word interrogator. Makes me think of good cop, bad cop in police dramas.
Call me the interviewer then, or the SEer. Any term is fine as long as we know what we mean. First, I ask for a claim, then a confidence level to determine my interlocutor's doxastic openness or closedness.
Now you're just messing with me. You just made up a word that rhymes with sarcastic to see if I was paying attention.
Doxastic is a word that relates to your willingness to adjust your beliefs. If I am doxastically open, I am willing to consider new information that could change my mind. If I am doxastically closed, I would reject any new data or refuse to consider it. Does this mean we will talk about doxastic involuntarism?
Oh, no, I think we won't. Thank you, Reed. Thank you, Kimberly.
Sure thing.
Okay. We can open this up to the room. This is study group on jargon. We bring, if you look in the description, I have summarized roughly the 10.1 appendix that is part of the streetepistemology.com resources. Oh, I'm not saying this right. There is a large document that the community has made that collects all these things together. There's additionally a document somebody might be bringing in that talks about acronyms, short multiple. You know what an acronym is? Something that's made up of the words that are used in SE, and we can discuss those too. First, does anybody have any questions about any of these silly words, or would you like to tell us about what your favorite words are?
I like Elenchus. That's a very specialized term.
Yeah. How would you define Elenchus?
It's a portion of the Socratic method. It's the Q&A period.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I I had never heard the term Elenchus until I came to street epistemology. It was, even when I had looked at Socratic Dialogue, I had never remembered such a silly word as that. Why should we bother with such a word? Why should we keep strange words in our vocabulary for this when I could just say the question and answer? What does it matter?
Probably not required.
Everybody
but
may be unmuted. This is not required. Okay.
Really good job. Really good job, guys. I love it. But I
Yes,
like
thank you.
I agree with Reed about the Elenchus because I think it's
Mhm.
one of the richest words from street epistemology, and you're answering your question about why to use Elenchus instead of all these other words. I think it's for the practicality of summarizing it. It actually it's more than just the question and answers because it's all in between. You know, all those arguments is like the answer, the question and answer is already the summary of a lot of talk.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the Elenchus, it would be like the your case in general. It would be like what did your lawyer prepare, and it's more like that entire process. So it's more like a book and not just the Elenchus is not just like a question and answer. It's thick. The meaning is deep. I don't know.
Yes, I hear
How
you.
you guys doing?
Oh, we're having fun. It's a good day today. The word I get the most pushback on is interrogator. I rather like interrogator. To me, it says the most obvious thing, but other people like examiner or question person. I'm not sure what else. But interrogator seems to trigger people. Does it bother anybody here?
a little bit,
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's natural to feel bothered.
You've muted. Fanny is muted. Can't hear her.
Terror presupposes they're looking wrong.
You need to turn this up if you want to talk. See that button?
Oh,
I said interrogator often presupposes they're looking for something wrong.
Yes.
yeah, and I think it implies
Yeah.
some pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it reminds
People
me
feel
of,
like they will be pressured.
reminds me of like a police detective interrogating some type of suspect. So it's like an adversarial relationship right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it usually implies that there is some sort of force or coercion, or it's not something you do with consent. So that is why personally I don't like being interrogated. I would much rather be interviewed. Interviewing is when someone asks you things because they want to know. It's usually consensual and it's usually voluntary and appreciated.
Yeah, I like that. So I think interviewer or examiner is my favorite alternative to interrogator.
Or just generic conversation partner.
Interlocutor.
Yeah, but both sides of the
Yeah, I
conversation.
like the conversation partner from the book. How to have it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking is that from Impossible Conversations primarily? I don't remember what the first book called it. It's been a few years since I've read it.
It might have just been Interlocutor.
Mm-hmm.
IL, yeah,
No.
and then
Yeah, Interlocutor. That's also barely English. I've outside of SE, I've never heard of somebody referred to as an.
those words are very Latin because Elenchus and an interlocutor for me from Portuguese is pretty close. It's very understandable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what is it in Portuguese?
Interlocutor.
Okay,
The same
yeah. I hear the similarity. I do. I don't think I can hear any different.
And the elenco.
Elenco. Okay. So is elenco a more common term in Portuguese than elenchus would be in English?
Yeah, Elenco in Portuguese is used for casting. It's also casting in a movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so who you choose
So
to
it's
play a role.
elenco de atrizes and atores, like actresses and actors in a movie. It's called, the casting would be called elenco in Portuguese.
Auditioning. Yeah, auditioning and being selected. Yes. I suppose
No,
casting
it's
to me
like the
seems like the
collective, yeah,
successful version.
the collective of all the people that work as actor and actress would be the elenco.
Actor.
So that's why that.
Go ahead.
So actors
Yeah,
as a group?
yeah.
Okay. So there were some other words that I found that are tangential to street epistemology. Apologetics. That's not a SE term, but it's a term that's almost always used in relation to theists. But apparently, it means making a reasoned defense for something, which would be like a defense attorney would make an apologia for their client or something like. And my understanding is it basically apologists refer to those people who are probably defending theism through reason, something like that. And I don't think it's specific to theism necessarily, but I only hear it used in relationship.
No, I've seen people using for other things. I've been called the apologist for other things, for other things that not theism. I've been called a rapist apologist.
Oh my, ouch. Ah,
Wow.
Yeah.
that'll make you stop and
And
think.
it's of course that was just like an empty accusation to try to stop the conversation from the beginning. You know, that is one of
Sure.
the other things we talk in the book on how to have impossible conversation, to be more charitable to the other side. So if someone says like I'm a pro-abortion, just don't call them murders to stop the conversation. The same way that I was
Yeah.
in this case specifically, I was trying to defend David Silverman against
Hmm.
the false accusations that he has received and destroy his career in the atheist community. And in the group, people just threw like, oh, if you know, in Centoya Brown case, for example, there was a famous case that it's about rape. You know, there was a rape involved, or she claimed that she was raped, and then I was defending like many cases of that or controversial, and then
Hmm.
people just jumped on accusing of a rapist apologist. But
Yeah.
interesting
It's sort of
enough, when
that's an
we went to,
extreme ad hom, I think.
yeah, but that is the thing that's interesting, because when I actually tried to keep going the conversation, they actually confessed that they knew nothing about neither of the cases. So it's easy to accuse me when I knew much more, and they did not even want to know about it, by the way.
Hmm.
So it just died mostly. We went back to the conversation later, and a week after that, and kind of fix the misunderstandings. I guess people understood that just the Me Too movement and the believe all women, no matter what, it's maybe not the best way to live life. We still have to judge people, we should still hold on evidence.
Yeah, having insults like that reminds me of, if you give someone a specific insult like that, you're kind of signaling what kind of community you're coming from in saying that type of insult, which relates kind of back to jargon, which is, if we say a Linkus or confidence scale, you immediately kind of know which community of you're talking with. Like the SE community uses these jargon words. So it's kind of like a way to signal a tribe that you're coming from.
Hmm.
Mhm.
There's some more words that are in the
I have
10.1 appendix. Go ahead. Yes, please. Go ahead. Do you have? No, you didn't have one. Okay. Deepity. This is a term that we often will make reference to somebody saying a deepity. And for me, a deepity is one of those things that is trivially true, but doesn't mean much, but seems to indicate something profound. And it's not true in the profound. The example that Dan Dennett likes to use is, love is just a word. And well, yes, that's trivially true, but it doesn't really mean anything important when you say so. And so deepities, very common as responses in SE. People will give a deepity or I'm not remembering the other word. I remember that it starts with a P, but I don't remember the word. So I'm going to move on. Knowledge. That's such an English word, but it gets argued about what it means so much of the time. The first 15 minutes of a lot of conversations is trying to decide whether knowledge actually implies certainty or not. Things like that. That was a two-stroke. Maybe not.
I love
Go
that you
ahead.
brought this up because the knowledge conversation is something that I still have argued with even atheist friends, because they keep telling me I have one specific we talk very often, and he tells me that he hates agnostics. He hates people that call themselves agnostics because the agnostics are the problem of the entire world. And he never managed to really make his point on like why, but he says about because they know nothing. And then I tried to argue with him about what is the knowledge, and we kind of have like not really progress, because I like to bring back to the conversation of the knowledge as gnos, of the meaning of the word in Greek, that is gnos, and what it would be the word knowledge, to know something. Because there are theists that want to use gnos and say like they are gnostic about their God because they have, and that we also are gnostics about their God because we have heard of it, and that would be the gnos, the knowledge. To just have heard of it, you already know of it. And I don't agree with that, of course. I think knowledge is to not just experience that, but have ways to prove that, like to bring evidence of it. And that would be more what a knowledge is, because I keep thinking of like, what would make me believe in any of the gods that people claim to exist today? And even if I experience something supernatural right now, I would think could be a trick of my mind. So I would have to have more things to really conclude that God really exists. Hello.
I'm going to drop my video just for bandwidth reasons. And,
Okay, stop mine too.
Sorry, I dropped off earlier. I have a quick
that's
question.
okay. Yes, please.
Right. So, if somebody doesn't accept any evidence other than, let's say, scientific evidence, does this count as doxastic closure?
Doxastic closure can be specific to a particular belief. Somebody might be completely closed about theist claims and completely open to claims in chemistry, for example. It can be distinct per. I've often found that theists use a very distinctly different epistemology, a way to choose whether they're going to take in data or how they believe data, depending on the field. And they will hold their theistic beliefs separate from their scientific beliefs or their social beliefs. Did I address the question about closure?
That sounded like a yes. Yeah. So it sounds like you're just saying it's different. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, that. All right. So there's also a list. Go ahead. Does anybody else have any further things on?
On that regard, doxastically closed would be not only just for science, but anyone that doesn't accept X is technically doxastically closed. If you refuse any source in particular, you are technically doxastically closed, as far as I know.
Yes.
But what would be that refuse? Because maybe it's not that you're refusing. You listen to the person, and the claim is just fantastic. The same way that the religious guy tells God, Jesus died and resurrected. It's fantastic. For who doesn't believe, the guy saying like, "Oh, I was abducted by aliens." It is incredible for the believer to sometimes believe that, you know. So to listen and refuse the claim is to be doxastic closure. I don't know. I would say like maybe not.
What I meant is refusing outright. If like anyone that is from X category says something, is, oh, I shouldn't listen to you because you are X, that you're not listening to them and refusing their arguments, you are basically saying, I don't want to listen to you because you are part of X group, be it a religious group, conspiracy group, or whatever group. If you don't want to listen to anyone, it doesn't mean, what I meant by refusing is, it doesn't mean that, as far as I understand the term doxastically closed.
You made that clear. Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay. This will be the lightning round. Who can tell us what the following words mean? CRU. Sorry, these are the acronyms. CRU. Anybody know this one?
Is this the Christian organization that's campus something?
Yes, Campus Crusade for Christ. Very common that we run up against those. So in street epistemology, we have an acronym just for them, like BS, which is belief stack. Isn't that what BS means? Belief stack?
I've rarely heard that.
What does
How
that
about
mean?
F-bomb? What is F-bomb mean?
It's a good one.
F-bomb.
F-bomb.
That's a,
What
I
does
heard
it.
inside street epistemology? What is an F-bomb?
faith.
Well, that's when somebody brings up the word faith in there, because suddenly that opens up maybe half of what street epistemology ends up
Love.
doing, is digging down on the term faith. There's so much. How about IL? This one's easier. Even the birds.
Interlocutor.
Mm-hmm. Interlocutor. So, how about a JW or an LDS? Do we know what that is?
Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Latter-day Saint.
Yes, Mormon Church. One that we all should know is OTF, the Outsider Test for Faith. That's one that I have not been enough in the habit of using, and I'm trying to use a lot more. Is everybody comfortable to know what I mean when I say outsider test for faith?
How about you give an example, Jeremy?
All right.
No, what is that?
It is so if I'm speaking to one person with one particular faith, and they give me a stack of reasons, like I believe because A, B, and C, I might be able to find another faith that would give the same A, B, and C reasons. And I say, so if I had somebody from this other faith, maybe it's Muslim, maybe it's Hindu, that comes to me with exactly the same A, B, and C reasons, and those are plausible, now I can say, which of you should I believe? Because I think your claims are exclusive. So how do I tell between? And this allows us to dig into, maybe it exposes special pleading. Maybe it opens up further reasons that they need to describe in order to legitimize their claim.
It also can be used, I think, in a cultural context or a moral context. So it's good at parsing, because people who have different moral political leanings will take information and interpret it differently. So sometimes it's a nice way of saying, oh, but someone with this information actually concluded that this political system just needs to be improved, and actually it was, these reasons for it being the case. So why have you interpreted it this way rather than that way? So I think it can be a nice way of opening the lid on someone's political epistemology or moral epistemology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
I
here's
like
one
to
that without even any. Go ahead.
I like to visualize the OTF as like walking down a path in the forest, like towards truth, but there's like a fork in the road. And, if one person is using some type of method that is like a dead end, and someone else is saying, go on this other path, but it kind of looks exactly like the other path, I'm assuming this is another dead end. So that's kind of how I think of it.
Mm-hmm. So here's one. I'm not even going to give you the letters. Okay, Reed already knows. That would be the Tic Tac test. I put on my video, you'd see a little box of Tic Tacs. And most of us are probably familiar with the question of, is there an odd or an even number in the Tic Tacs? And this is one of those questions that's designed to show something really solidly, objectively true. And we would bring this up whenever somebody's saying, well, it's true for you, it could be true for me, each person can have their own truth and that kind of thing. And so the Tic Tac test allows us to start by saying, here's a thing that's really, really objectively true. Where do you draw the line between objectivity and subjectivity?
And you can actually have people who don't draw the line there. So they say, oh yeah, no, there's an objective answer to the Tic Tac test. But then they might have some special pleading for divine revelation or kind of supernatural effects. So they say, oh, within a naturalistic framework, there's an odd number, but within some additional framework, there's something else. Yeah. So it can be, they get off the train at some point, and it can help you figure out when.
Okay. Which is the correct acronym for the atheist experience? TAE or AXP?
AXP.
AXP. Okay, and the answer is both. They're both listed, so that's fine. Okay. I don't know why the atheist experience is so important in SE. We have 2 acronyms for it. Wow. But I don't see MD for Matt Dillahunty, so I don't know what's wrong with it. But yet I can see AN, RN, and PB. I'm wondering where our priorities are. We should have
something. We should try and name a term after Boghossian. There should be something within this framework that we should try and coin a term using his surname.
Also, there is no need for acronym for Matt. You just say Matt, and everybody knows who you are talking about.
Right. Good point.
That's how cliquey this is.
Oh my. So there's one that I'm not expecting people to have one at all, and that's called PIMO or PIMO. You want to take a guess? Yeah.
What was that, Juggling?
PIMO.
PIMO.
Yeah. Now this is very narrow. This is a really strange one. Okay, well, if it's not obvious, this is actually the term that Jehovah's Witnesses use for people who are pretending to still be Jehovah's Witnesses while they're going through a deconversion.
Oh, wow.
Because the consequences of leaving JW are so severe in a person's life, it's very common that people will, I think they call it deconstruct, all the way to being a complete atheist before they actually move out of the church. So it's called physically in, mentally out. PIMO is a kind of a cool thing because I think people who are in some stage of PIMO, whether that be Jehovah's Witness or not, are probably the ones most helped by street epistemology. So we're looking for the PIMOs because the ones that are all the way in, we're probably not going to help them very much, and we don't want to bother their
Talking
dad.
about this real serious hostage.
Hmm. Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, we're at 30 minutes. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add on the topic this of this study group or anything else? And now it's okay to go off topic.
Well, I would love the idea if we could try and brainstorm a term, like I said, that uses Boghossian's name.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I haven't got any ideas. So. But I think it would be cool. I think he deserves something within this.
The mental image that I'm getting at, I've got bog and hose, and so I'm thinking of New Age rhymes with sewage. New Age rhymes with sewage is like the bog hose or something. I don't know that he'd appreciate that association. Black water hose or something.
We already also name so many things already have we overuse acronyms and stuff, so maybe there just isn't space.
Oh, that's okay. It's all right.
Maybe
It could be an inside joke.
Maybe you pull a Boghossian where you do like a secret steel man where you're not on.
Oh.
Well, you try to put forward an idea or a belief or claim and have someone SE you, and it's just so either bizarre or absurd, but people still think it's true or something like that.
So pulling a Boghossian is managing to pull a Poe for the long haul. Oh, that'd be great. Yes.
So basically, right, steel manning a difficult position to steel man. Or
yeah.
Yeah, successfully steel manning some absurd or unethical thing.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm going to start using
it. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. I like it. To Boghossian something is to successfully steel man it so hard that people believed you. Oh, that's good. That's good. And obviously, the more absurd, the better.
I feel like to do a Boghossian, it has to be like something absurd.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
I think it's cool to bring Boghossian because it kind of links to the conversation we just had yesterday and kind of explain a little bit of my position on a lot of like be scientific but be skeptic at the same time, because I think the grievance studies kind of showed that it's not just it's a scientific study you have to believe. Different from I kind of talked to all of them already in my channel about this, Helen, James, and Peter, how we had to move on from the last century, the beginning of the last century. People would not believe scientific studies to the end of the century where everybody believes in the scientific studies and will believe in the title of the scientific study or whatever, even if it's a theory-based study that has a broken methodology, people will believe as the same way as a clickbait, that they will not read the matter or read the study and find out that could not be a proper study or a proper matter about that, and they will just believe in the title, the real clickbait.
Yep.
I don't know, am I going too far from sorry.
No, scientific literacy is a real problem. But I think scientific literacy to the point that you understand that you are illiterate in the subject is really important, because the more science you do, the more you understand that what you don't understand, and therefore you don't tend to make or be confident in claims in which you're just not well versed in the literature. But unfortunately, that's often a lesson that's hard won through becoming a professional academic or in a particular area, because it doesn't have to be, but I think a lot of PhD students go through that, and maybe MD students, I don't know if any, but when you go through that, go through a process of realizing how difficult it is to understand the subject, and even when you're supposed to be ahead of the field, how much you're like, oh crap, I don't really understand this part of it or this, and then your skepticism for everything else and your understanding, you go at the bottom of the Dunning-Kruger curve and then come out the other side.
True, Harry, but COVID is pretty much proving that that's not true.
What was that, Redding? I missed that. Was that Redding or was that someone else?
I'm not sure. But, I heard something about COVID proving that that's not true.
I think he's coming back.
Sure.
Yeah.
There you go. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, I really wish what you just said was true, but if you look to Twitter and the COVID-19, it's proving not to be true, where you're getting a lot of medical professionals chiming in on the COVID. So you'll have a emergency doctor, or you have a surgeon, or you'll have any doctor that's not in the field of virology completely the results of scientific study apart. And then ultimately what happens is a virologist, an actual expert, comes in and smacks them down and shows them how little they actually know.
No, I agree. I think there's a probability, right? So I think it's more probable that people who are PhD students or MD students are less likely to fall for being confident in fields they don't understand. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people in those fields who'll do that, by all means.
Yeah, ideally the philosophy and the PhD kind of covers the general critical thinking aspect of PhDs, but sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yes. Yeah. It really does depend on the journey that you go through to doing that, and whether you've had good supervision.
Yeah, I think the important thing is to, as Harry mentioned before, I think anybody could talk and become like a kind of like specialist of anything. There is no need to specifically be a PhD to know more. And, if you're curious about whatever, you're not a doctor, just go read, go follow. Mainly now it is the beauty of the internet. You can actually have access to everything. And that's why we also have to be somehow careful on what we receive, and also look for some type of more academic knowledge to be able to sort on the internet what is BS from what is real science. And of course you require some knowledge to be able to judge that, because there are evidence in the internet for pretty much everything you want to believe today.
Yeah. That's why, understanding the methods of a study and understanding the field itself means that you can evaluate how effective that study is and whether it really sways a consensus or adds something new and novel to the field. I would say that this is where I would like to see street epistemology kind of 2.0 form, because I feel like it was birthed, in the idea of combating faith-based epistemology and confronting the concepts of confronting beliefs that aren't necessarily based in rational, in kind of rational evidence and scientific thinking. But there's still this huge gap with epistemology in general, which is, okay, now we both agree on the naturalist framework. How do we go about navigating and getting information that is effective, and how do we go about evaluating this information? And I think I'd like to see street epistemology move into this area, so it's not so so it can be as focused on religion, but also has this separate aspect, which is kind of for the naturalists and most street epistemologists, most people who practice SE have that framework already. So it's kind of helping the community develop better critical thinking skills, and actually where do you go when you want to evaluate a claim made by a doctor on Twitter, or how do you think about these particular, how do you think about a newspaper headline or whatever that may be.
Totally agree. That's where I'm trying to push my area of interest into, those type of things, non-religious, more political, more, cultural type claims. That those are going to be interesting.
Have you doing those claims, has that kind of changed up some of your approaches that you've previously done? Have you found that there's actually been some things that you've switched or added?
Kind of. There's maybe prostitution or sex work. I have a video that I may upload soon where someone I had my confidence at the beginning and hers at the beginning, and by the end I got more confident or a little bit more in my position by her explaining stuff. So with those types of things, you can be more open and show how you change your confidence right there and there.
So you think you're kind of rather than staying neutral, it's about it's kind of it's more of an impossible conversation wherein you're showing good faith in the argument by showing how you change according to evidence and their evidence and inviting them to do so, rather than kind of a SE neutral position of just questions.
Yeah, I'm experimenting with that. We'll see how that goes. Sometimes it backfires, you know. Sometimes it makes it more of an adversarial relationship if you're on the opposite side, for sure. But sometimes if it's the claim that I agree with, maybe not all the way, but and to a large extent, then it's not so much an adversarial thing.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes I feel like the conversation begins after, you know, if you complete an essay and you conclude they use scientific evidence and rationalization but come to a different outcome, it's almost like, okay, now we're just going to have a conversation about the evidence that you know and the evidence I know. And then SE doesn't become, you can use some of the tools, but sometimes I feel like there could be a better toolkit created than about that kind of the next stage in that conversation. I'm really glad that you're looking. I'm excited to see some of those videos and watch you learning.
Cool, yeah.
Harry, I heard you use that word rational a couple of times. Could you maybe explain what that means?
Sure. I think it's. I think being rational is following kind of the logic of a proposition and basically making sure that it being rational means that you are you don't fall for any fallacies. Basically, like the propositions don't fall for any fallacies.
Does that mean that animals can't be rational?
I don't know. I don't know. The way that I'm using it colloquially now is, I mean, there's rationalization in terms of understanding the environment. So I guess you could get into the weeds a bit about it. All depends on how you define it according to intelligence, and if there's a type of intelligence that rationalizes, then do other animals have that type of rationalization? I tend to think of rational as rationality as like language and discourse. So if A, then B, and so on and so forth, rather than kind of integral thoughts about the environment. But I suppose you could be as crude as to say that animals kind of rationalize according to their environment, but they wouldn't have as sophisticated tools to understand whether they're. I suspect they'd fall for all the confirmation bias that we know we try and strip ourselves of. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So
are
philosophers more rational according to you? Because in that linguistic sense, they can see the logic of the proposition, therefore they're more rational?
I think it's really dependent on the philosopher and the position. I think it's a context-based thing. But I would say, yeah, as a colloquially, yeah, I would say that I would hope to think that philosophers are more rational in terms of they understand how kind of the logic of the matter could be falsified depending on how you've kind of created your syllogisms and stuff.
I hear from our French sector that in France, they prefer the term epistemic interview to street epistemology.
Ooh.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And that in that community, they spend a lot more time addressing snake oil sales pitches, conspiracy theories, and paranormal believers rather than the religious. And my friend thinks that this is because in France, socially, religion is considered a much more private thing. So they don't openly talk about it so much.
Yeah, there's one
Anyway.
French, overview video about, those types of beliefs that they're applying an epistemic interview. That's what the term they put forward. So that's really cool.
Yeah, they have a term they use that's called zetetic, I think, which is kind of a demonym for like the skeptic community.
How do you spell that?
ZETH maybe. I will just type it.
I think that's actually the same term that's been used by the flat earthers for their definition of science of observe and don't do anything further, which is not anything like what you mean. I think skepticism is the opposite of that, but I'm fine with the term zetetic.
Zetetic is a French term for the application of specific method when investigating allegedly paranormal phenomenon. It is often seen as equivalent to or somewhat different from the term skepticism and is widely used in the modern skeptical movement in France for self-identification.
Fair enough.
Wonderful. Okay, we've been going about 45 minutes. If there's further ideas and comments that we'd like to talk about, bring them up. Otherwise, I'm going to shift to ending. Going. Very well. Thank you very much for coming to the show. Here are some recommended SE channels. We're going to increase this list a lot to include the one that's on the YouTube channel. And so there's a lot more than just these two. Reed and Fanny, I plan to add your lists, your channels to the description. If there's anybody else here that I should also add, hit me up and I will type it in when I can make that adjustment. Thank you very much. If you're really into street epistemology and want to learn a lot more about it, my favorite resource page is Street Epistemology International. I'm sorry, streetepistemology.com. That is provided by Street Epistemology International. I'll get that right. Thank you to my guests and all of you for doing this. Without you, I wouldn't be doing it. I couldn't be doing it. Thank you, thank you. And if you would like to be a guest on my show for any of the categories that I have, just contact me in DM or by email at jugglingLessons.com. Sorry, I said that badly. jugglinglessons@gmail.com. Do not have my URL. Thank you. I look forward to hearing from you.